Hey everyone, this is Michael again, and welcome to the Smackdown and AEW Rampage review. Smackdown tonight was from the Fiserv Forum in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, while Rampage was taped from the Agganis Arena in Boston, Massachusetts. And Smackdown tonight, oh my god. What the fuck did we watch tonight with Smackdown? This show was a train wreck of epic proportions. This show was fucking terrible. God awful. The worst 2 hours of Smackdown. This might possibly be the worst Smackdown of the year, in my opinion. We had 3 call-ups tonight. We had Walter, or as WWE wants to call him by Gunther, made his main roster debut along with Marcel Barthel from Imperium. And Marcel Barthel is being called Ludwig. Yeah, Ludwig Kaiser. So they made their main roster debuts tonight. And I'm like, why didn't you call up Fabian Aichner? You know what this means, right? Fabian Aichner is going to be on the next set of releases. Imperium, they were one of my favorite tag teams. You know, in NXT UK and then in NXT. Walter, this guy, was the longest reigning NXT UK champion. And when he made his debut tonight, I just saw in him that he feels like everybody else already on the SmackDown roster. He feels completely like everyone else. And then we had the main roster debut or main roster call-up also for Raquel Gonzalez. But they are now calling her Raquel Rodriguez. And Raquel Gonzalez, if you watch NXT, she teamed up with Dakota Kai. So now they're calling her Raquel Rodriguez. Why not bring up Dakota Kai along with her? Dakota Kai is ready for the main roster. What is there for Dakota Kai to do else in NXT? They should have called her up, paired her still with Raquel Gonzalez, or Raquel Rodriguez, what they're calling her. So yeah, those are your 3 call-ups from NXT. And I say Gunther or Walter and Marcel Barthel, Ludwig Kaiser, it just smells like disaster for them. So I have no hope for the both of them. And that's sad to say about Walter. But also on SmackDown, we had Xavier Woods versus Pete Dunne. Yes, Pete Dunne in his SmackDown in-ring debut. Or as WWE would call him, Butch in his in-ring debut. We had McIntyre versus Sami Zayn. Liv Morgan versus Sasha Banks. And also Walter was in a match where he squashed this guy named Joe Alonzo. That was SmackDown tonight. Does this sound like a good show to you all? What a fucking waste of 2 hours this show was. Absolutely terrible show. This is the worst SmackDown of the year. But before I get into the review, if you guys haven't checked out my previous video that I uploaded earlier today, I saw Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Movie review is up for that. Really enjoyed the film. It was as fun as the first film. And if you like Sonic, if you love the games and loved the first movie, definitely check out the sequel. It's a very fun film it was. But anyways, let's get right into the review. SmackDown opened up tonight with Kayla Braxton. Kayla Braxton was in the ring, and she introduced Ronda Rousey. So Ronda ended up coming out, got a pop from the crowd. Kayla Braxton ended up saying that everyone can agree Ronda Rousey was in a very physical match at WrestleMania last Saturday against Charlotte Flair. And she kept her word when she said she'd make SmackDown's Women's Champion, Charlotte, tap out. So then we saw, video of Charlotte tapping while the referee was down, in that match at WrestleMania. Kayla Braxton ended up saying that Charlotte definitely felt the pressure. So Ronda ended up getting on the mic. She ended up saying that she did make Charlotte tap, and she will make her tap again. She ended up saying, but what matters is she lost, and she didn't come here to make excuses. Ronda ended up mentioning how the best needs to beat the one on top twice. And she beat Charlotte once, not twice, making her tap, not when it counted, and that it's on her. So Kayla Braxton ended up asking Ronda, what's next? Ronda ended up telling Kayla Braxton that she wants a rematch, but not a regular match. And that she doesn't want Charlotte to be able to get herself disqualified or counted out. So Ronda Rousey ended up saying that she challenges Charlotte to an I Quit match at WrestleMania Backlash. So Charlotte ended up appearing on the screen. She was laughing. Charlotte ended up saying that Ronda couldn't beat her at checkers, let alone an I Quit match. Charlotte ended up saying that quitting isn't in her DNA, but winning is. Charlotte wanted to say that she's starting to think the baddest woman on the planet is a myth because Ronda can't win. So Charlotte ended up saying no to the challenge. She ended up telling Ronda to get to the back of the line, bitch. So Charlotte was laughing as Ronda was looking on. Ronda ended up saying that she has some news for Charlotte. She ended up telling Charlotte that the match will happen, and that Charlotte won't say she quits. She'll scream it when she snaps her arm backwards. Ronda then ended up dropping the mic, and that was basically how the segment ended. But this was awful. This was cringe. We're going to begin a rematch with Charlotte and Ronda Rousey at WrestleMania Backlash, an I Quit match. Who cares to see this? Who does? We gotta see another rematch between the both of them. When their WrestleMania match was fucking awful. We gotta get another match up with them. Just very cringe this whole segment was. And then we had the first match of the night. We had Xavier Woods versus Pete Dunne, or as WWE would like to call Pete Dunne, Butch. In this match, it was okay in my opinion. So Sheamus and Ridge Holland and Pete Dunne end up coming out. Pete Dunne rushed to the ring, and SmackDown went to commercial. And then as SmackDown came back from the commercial, Xavier Woods and Kofi Kingston end up coming out. So they end up taunting Sheamus and Ridge Holland and Pete Dunne. And they go on about how since this is the SmackDown season opener, that means all records are reset. And the two sides are 0-0 now. They're 0-0. Xavier Woods ended up heading to the ring. And then the match ended up getting underway, which Pete Dunne ended up leveling Xavier Woods with a clothesline. Started mounting him with some right hands. Woods turned it around in the corner, started to lift some chops to Dunn's chest. Dunn ended up fighting Xavier Woods off, and he ended up getting sent face first into the turnbuckles. Pete Dunne delivered a enziguri in the corner, and then a knee drop to Xavier Woods, and then he locked in an armbar. Pete Dunne bent Xavier Woods' fingers back, so Woods ended up getting free with his foot on the bottom rope, and that's when Dunn ended up stomping on Xavier Woods' elbow. Xavier Woods turned it around, delivered a jawbreaker to Dunn. Woods then delivered a side Russian leg sweep and then a basement drop kick, which sent Dunn to the floor. Dunn ended up dodging a drop kick through the ropes from Xavier Woods. He ended up decking Woods with a forearm. Dunn ended up slamming Woods onto the edge of the apron, started staring him down. And as Smackdown came back from the commercial, Dunn, he ended up doing Sheamus's 10 beats of the Bull Run. And Sheamus was taunting Xavier Woods. And at the end of the match, we had Dunn end up stomping away on Xavier Woods' head. Dunn ended up charging with a running kick. Woods ended up sidestepping. He rolled up Dunn. And there you go. Xavier Woods ended up winning the match. Post-match, Woods ended up retreating out to the floor as Pete Dunne, or Butch, ended up seething. Sheamus and Ridge Holland, they ended up trying to hold Dunn back because he snapped. And he ended up slapping both Sheamus and Ridge Holland. And he then punched Ridge Holland, Pete Dunne, or Butch. So Sheamus and Ridge Holland end up yelling at Dunn, backed him into the corner. Dunn ended up climbing up to the top. He sat up on the top rope. And as Sheamus and Ridge Holland were trying to calm him down. And that was basically that. So Pete Dunne, aka Butch, as WWE would want to call him on the main roster, but I will always call him Pete Dunne. I don't want to call him fucking Butch. So he gets his first loss in his SmackDown in-ring debut. He is dead on arrival. Watch his name be on the next set of releases. And this guy was NXT UK champion. Let that sink in. Overall, okay match it was. And then we had Sami Zayn. Sami Zayn was backstage. He was rented to Adam Pearce. He was asking how Adam Pearce let that happen to him, have a Anything Goes match at WrestleMania against Johnny Knoxville. Sami Zayn ended up saying that he was supposed to get revenge on Johnny Knoxville, but instead had to deal with Wee Man and Chris Pontius and a giant hand. Sami Zayn ended up saying that he's been reduced to a laughing stock now. Well, that match was embarrassing for Sami Zayn, but the match was stupid at WrestleMania, but it was stupid yet enjoyable. It was a comedy match done right, and it didn't even feel forced. See, I like when they do a comedy match like that, and they don't just throw it at you as being forced. Like, take, for instance, the 24/7 shit. Every time the 24/7 shit is on Monday Night Raw, it's forced. It's like, oh yeah, we gotta laugh at this, when no, it's not funny. They just force that on us. This, you could tell that, they planned it all out, and it didn't feel forced. But Sami Zayn ended up saying that he wants his respect back. So Sami Zayn ended up saying that the next person who walked through the door, he wants to fight them in the ring. So Adam Pearce ended up agreeing to that. So the door opened, and it was Drew McIntyre. Drew McIntyre opened the door. He ended up acknowledging both Pierce and Sami Zayn, and then walked off. Sami Zayn ended up telling Adam Pearce that he wants the next person. But Adam Pearce ended up saying to Sami Zayn, no, the match with McIntyre is official. So Sami Zayn ended up saying, that's perfect, because McIntyre is one of the toughest on the roster. And when he beats him, he will get his respect back. So we had that match later on tonight, Sami Zayn versus Drew McIntyre. So then we saw a crew member end up bringing a letter to Adam Pearce, and apparently the letter was Ronda Rousey wanted to meet with Adam Pearce. Pearce ended up telling that crew member to tell Ronda that he's unable to see her. Pretty much that was basically that. And then we had Marcel Barthel, or now they changed his name. You know, WWE and their love for changing certain superstars' names when it shouldn't be that way. If it's not broke, don't fix it. I don't understand why they gotta change certain superstars' names. Why? Do they need it? No. So now they're calling Marcel Barthel Ludwig Kaiser. Are you kidding me? So he was on the stage with the mic. He introduced the epitome of efficiency and elegance. So he ended up speaking in German, and he billed this person as the ring general. So Barthel ended up introducing Gunther, aka Walter, which I'm still calling him Walter. So stupid how they had to change his name to Gunther. We all know about the backlash that caused, and fans wanted WWE to change his name back to Walter. But out came Walter, not calling him Gunther. So Gunther and Barthel end up coming out. They made their way to the ring, not calling Barthel Ludwig Kaiser. And Michael Cole and commentary end up hyping up Walter. And now I see why they got brought up to Smackdown from NXT. Walter ended up losing his match to Braun Breaker this past Tuesday on NXT. And Barthel wanted to get away from Fabian Aichner. You could tell that they were going to be breaking up Imperium. And Imperium was one of my favorite teams in NXT. Marcel Barthel and Fabian Aichner, they are a good tag team. I remember when Imperium first started on NXT UK. And it was them two and Walter. Now, WWE has brought up two of the three Imperium guys. So you know what this means. Fabian Aichner is possibly going to be released. He's going to be on the next set of releases. And with Walter and Barthel on the main roster here, I see this being a disaster for them. Watch. In about maybe close to November, December, they're not going to be with WWE. Watch, you see Walter, Aichner, and Barthel all down there in AEW. Watch. I may be wrong on that, but I sense that happening. I sense that happening as we go to the end of the year. Walter, or Gunther, ended up taking on Joe Alonzo. And this was just a squash match. Walter applied a headlock, launched Alonzo with a hip toss. He was manhandling Alonzo, Walter. So we had the piped in crowd chants of Walter, because when both Barthel and Walter end up coming out, they came out to 0 reactions, 0 from the crowd. And so you had WWE piped in Walter chants when the crowd wasn't even cheering for him. The people in the crowd were like, who is this guy? Like, they don't watch NXT. Well, some people probably don't watch NXT nowadays because of the whole change, and now you have Vince McMahon and Bruce Pritchard running NXT, not Triple H anymore, which is sad. But Walter, or Gunther, end up winning the match. He finished off Alonzo with a powerbomb, and that was that. Squash match. So there you go. Walter and Marcel Barthel on the main roster. Just sounds like disaster for me. Why couldn't you call up Fabian Aichner so you have all of Imperium on the main roster? I don't get it. I don't fucking get it. What's Fabian Aichner going to do down there now in NXT before his name is on the next set of releases? What's he going to do? What's he going to do down there in NXT? And like I said, Walter, the name change to Gunther, is absolutely stupid. This guy went from the longest reigning NXT UK champion. He held that title for 870 days. He went from that to being Gunther, and his music got changed. So WWE, they changed his name to Gunther, give him new music, which the music that he had when he was with Imperium down in NXT was perfect. And they give him some stupid music change. And like I said, if it's not broke, don't fix it. I don't understand why WWE needs to change up superstars' names for no reason. I don't understand. Yeah, moving on. So we had Kayla Braxton. Kayla Braxton was backstage with another call-up from NXT. She was backstage with Raquel Gonzalez. And as always, WWE changed Raquel's last name from Gonzalez to Raquel Rodriguez. She's now being called Raquel Rodriguez. So Rodriguez ended up saying that SmackDown has one of the most impressive female locker rooms in all WWE. Most impressive? What have you been watching? But she ended up saying that she guarantees they've never seen anything like her. Los Lotharios end up coming there. Angel Garza and Humberto Carrillo. They introduced themselves to Raquel. They welcomed her to SmackDown. She ended up thanking them. So Angel and Humberto wanted to give her a double kiss on each cheek, and Raquel ended up telling both of them, not a chance. And Raquel ended up asking Kayla Braxton if Los Lotharios are always this annoying. So that was basically that. So Raquel Rodriguez, or Raquel Gonzalez, part of the SmackDown women's roster. And this is just WWE bringing her up so she could be fed to Charlotte Flair. Another woman to be fed to Charlotte Flair. Where's Dakota Kai? How come WWE hasn't called up Dakota Kai to the main roster? Dakota Kai, if you think about it, she has done everything in NXT. What is there else for Dakota Kai to do down there in NXT? Dakota Kai is ready for the main roster. Why not call up Raquel and Dakota Kai together? Dakota Kai is still down there in NXT. What else is there for her to do down there? But yet they call up Raquel Gonzalez. Oh, and this show continues to get worse. We went to Corbin and Madcap Moss. Another edition of Happy Talk. Shit Talk. So Corbin ended up saying that this was supposed to be the happiest Happy Talk with a celebration for his win over McIntyre. But that didn't happen. Corbin was saying that he's done a lot of self-reflecting on his yacht this week, thinking about what kind of man he is and has become. Corbin ended up saying that there's only one man to blame for his loss, and that one man is Madcap Moss. Corbin ended up saying that never in a million years would he have lost to McIntyre if it wasn't for Moss getting on the apron. Moss then ended up saying to Corbin that he's sorry, and that he just felt so excited for Corbin. Corbin ended up saying that it wasn't about Moss's feelings, but somehow he managed to take WrestleMania weekend and make it about himself, about him winning the Andre the Giant Battle Royal, to which Moss won that last week on Smackdown. Like, who cares? So Corbin ended up mocking Moss. Corbin ended up saying that Moss is getting too big for his suspenders. And he thinks Moss has forgotten that his place is to tell Corbin jokes. Corbin ended up telling Moss to tell him jokes. So Moss ended up telling 2 jokes to Corbin, and the jokes were terrible as always. Corbin ended up saying that he brought Moss to SmackDown to tell jokes, but lately they have not been good. They never have been good. They have been just corny and awful. So Corbin ended up giving Moss one more chance and tells him to tell a good joke, like his job depends on it, because it does. So Moss starts taking shots at Corbin with the joke that he was telling. Corbin wasn't laughing. He kept asking the crowd why they think it's funny. So Corbin ended up dropping Moss from behind, started stomping away on him. Moss fought back, and he got a pop from the crowd. And I'm like, why? Corbin ended up getting tossed around, and Moss started unloading, ended up sending Corbin out to the floor. Moss ended up coming out, he fouled, and Corbin ended up kneeing him. He launched him into the barricade. Corbin ended up taunting Moss with the Andre the Giant Battle Royal statue. Ended up going to slam him face first into the commentary table. Moss countered, ended up slamming Corbin's face over and over into the commentary table. Moss ended up bringing Corbin back into the ring for some more punches, and then he delivered a clothesline out to the floor to Corbin. And we had Moss started tossing the Happy Talk set out of the ring. He stomped on Corbin's hat. And that was basically that. So pretty much babyface turn for Moss here. Just the segment was fucking terrible. And then we had Jinder Mahal and Shanky backstage. Mahal was yelling at Adam Pearce about not getting a shot at the Intercontinental Championship. Adam Pearce ended up saying that it's nothing personal. So Mahal ended up telling Pearce to bring Ricochet out of witness protection and get him into the ring. So Pearce ended up explaining himself. Ronda Rousey ended up walking in. Jinder Mahal ended up leaving. So Ronda Rousey ended up asking Adam Pearce if she has her I Quit match at WrestleMania Backlash against Charlotte. Pearce ended up saying that it's not official yet, but it should be tomorrow. So Ronda ended up saying that she doesn't like that answer, but she'll take it for now. But you know that match is going to be official. We don't need another Ronda and Charlotte match. But Jinder Mahal yelling at Adam Pearce about not getting a shot at the Intercontinental Championship. Man, that would have been an awful match there. Jinder Mahal versus Ricochet for the Intercontinental Championship. Ricochet would automatically win that match and retain the title. Jinder Mahal yelling at Adam Pearce about not getting a shot at the Intercontinental Championship. Was Jinder Mahal done to earn an opportunity for the Intercontinental Championship? Absolutely nothing. And then we had Drew McIntyre versus Sami Zayn. McIntyre ended up coming out first. He had his sword Angela in hand, of course. And as SmackDown came back from the commercial, Sami Zayn ended up coming out. Match ended up starting. McIntyre ended up charging at Sami Zayn, but Sami Zayn ended up going out to the floor. The referee was making the count. Sami came back in as the ref counted 9. We had the fans end up chanting cheese at Sami Zayn because, of course, Sami Zayn going through the table with the mouse traps. So Sami Zayn ended up going back out to the floor, ended up stalling as the fans ended up booing loud at him. McIntyre ended up grabbing Sami Zayn, sent him into the barricade, dropped him face first into the barricade. McIntyre rolled Sami Zayn back to the ring as McIntyre ended up hitting a belly throw to Sami Zayn. Sami ended up dodging a big boot from McIntyre and he went back out to the floor to take a breather. McIntyre ended up following Sami Zayn out. He ended up slamming Zayn into the commentary table. He then ended up lifting Sami Zayn high up in the air, dropped him into the commentary table. So McIntyre ended up chasing Sami Zayn, ended up dropping him on the stage. McIntyre scooped Sami Zayn on his shoulders, carried him back into the ring. And Sami Zayn ended up stumbling around in the ring. McIntyre was waiting in the corner for him to hit the Claymore on Sami Zayn. McIntyre ended up trying to go for the Claymore. Sami ended up retreating out of the ring, out to the floor. He hopped over the barricade. He ran through the fans. He ran up the steps into the crowd. And Drew McIntyre ended up winning the match by count out. And that was basically that. But overall, this was a waste of time. This was an absolute waste of time. So then Michael Cole ended up sending us to a vignette of Lacey Evans. He ended up calling this the first chapter in the story of Lacey Evans. So Lacey Evans returned to SmackDown tonight in this vignette. Of course, she was away. She had another baby. So we get this vignette from Lacey Evans. And she was pregnant with her baby last year in February. So Lacey Evans ended up talking about coming from a small town in Georgia. She wanted to say that her father worked in construction and her mom was a young mother of 5 kids. She ended up saying that her life beginning was rough because her father had mental health issues and also addiction issues with drugs and alcohol. She ended up saying that her mom was caught in the middle of it, trying to be the best mom she could be. Then the physical, emotional, and mental abuse got to be too much. And before she could start elementary school, she was taken away from everything she knew. Lacey Evans wanted to say that her mother loaded their belongings up in black trash bags, threw them in a car, and picked the kids all up from school, then left without their dad knowing. Lacey Evans then wanted to say that they drove from state to state, staying in women's shelters and at campgrounds for the rest of her life. She ended up saying that moving around as much as she had to do made her learn that she could either adapt and overcome and accept the way things were and learn to roll with it, completely give up. She kept saying that she refuses to give up. She kept saying that she may not have the same straight shot to stardom that others in the company have been blessed with, but that's okay, because it makes her different than all the rest. Lacey Evans ended up saying that what she's had to go through has made her into the woman she is today. Motivated, ready for anything, confident, a mother, a wife, a sister, a daughter, a U.S. Marine, and a WWE superstar. She kept saying that this doesn't make her better than any other superstar, but they damn sure ain't better than her. So that was the vignette from Lacey Evans. We got to know, the story of Lacey Evans, about her coming up from a small town in Georgia, and her parents, her father having mental health issues and addiction to drugs and alcohol. I mean, where was all this when Lacey Evans was brought up to the main roster? But it looks like they're doing away with her heel gimmick, and Lacey Evans is, from right here in this vignette, being a baby face. So, no more of those "y'all are nasties" from Lacey Evans. So, Lacey Evans, or she comes back live and gets in the ring. She will be, she is a baby face. She will be a baby face. And then we had Sasha Banks versus Liv Morgan. Sasha Banks ended up coming out along with Naomi. They are the Women's Tag Team Champions. And then as SmackDown came back from the commercial, we had Megan Morant interviewing Liv Morgan in the back. And Liv Morgan ended up saying that she came to SmackDown to beat Sasha. And if she can do that, she and Rhea Ripley will have momentum going into their shot for the Women's Tag Team titles. Megan Morant ended up asking if Rhea Ripley is here with Liv Morgan tonight. Liv Morgan ended up saying that Rhea Ripley isn't here, but she will be there on Monday when they win the Women's Tag Team titles. Newsflash, Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan are not winning the titles. And Rhea Ripley is going to be turning heel on Liv Morgan this Monday on Raw. It's going to happen. So yeah, Liv Morgan ended up coming out. Match ended up starting. Liv Morgan ended up rolling Sasha up for a quick pin attempt. And Naomi was on commentary through the match. Sasha Banks ended up decking Liv, ended up taunting her over being champion. And Liv Morgan ended up kicking Sasha face first into the turnbuckles. Liv Morgan delivered a missile drop kick from the corner to Banks. So we had Banks deliver a backstabber to Liv Morgan, which sent Liv Morgan out to the floor. As SmackDown came back from the commercial, Banks ended up finishing up, hitting the Three Amigos to Liv Morgan. Banks ended up going up to the top, and she delivered the frog splash onto Liv Morgan. She ended up going for the cover. Liv Morgan kicked out at 2. And we saw Natalya and Shayna Baszler. They were watching the match from backstage. So Liv Morgan delivered an enziguri to Sasha. Banks ended up catching a kick, and Liv Morgan also catched a kick from Sasha Banks. Banks ended up dropping Liv Morgan, rolled her into a 2 count. They were making pin attempts here. So at the end of the match, Sasha delivered a suplex from the second rope. Liv Morgan hooked the leg, and she ended up holding Sasha down for the pin. And there you go. Liv Morgan ended up winning the match. So typical WWE 101. Sasha and Naomi win the Women's Tag Team titles. Sasha's in the match tonight, and already Sasha is losing. Typical WWE 101, champions lose. Which shouldn't be like that. So post-match, Liv Morgan ended up standing tall, ended up heading to the floor, celebrating. Naomi ended up saying that win means nothing. So there you go. Liv Morgan, Rhea Ripley versus Sasha and Naomi this Monday on Raw for the Women's Tag Team titles. Sasha and Naomi are retaining the titles, and Rhea Ripley is going to be turning on Liv Morgan. So then we had the Bloodline end up coming out. Roman Reigns, the Usos, and Paul Heyman. So as SmackDown came back from the commercial, it was announced for next week's SmackDown it's going to be Drew McIntyre versus Sami Zayn again. And then Jinder Mahal versus Ricochet, non-title. So those are the only two matches that are taking place on SmackDown next week. So we had the Bloodline. They were in the ring. Reigns got on the mic, and he ended up calling on Milwaukee to acknowledge him. Reigns wanted to say to let everyone in on something private, something him and his wise man discuss rather frequently. Reigns ended up saying that it pains him to say that SmackDown and the Universal Championship wasn't enough. So he went to WrestleMania. He smashed Brock Lesnar, Cowboy Brock Lesnar, and took Monday Night Raw and took the WWE Championship. Reigns brought up what's next for him. He ended up saying that he doesn't think he can really do much more. He's did it all. He ended up saying that there's plenty left for the Bloodline to achieve. Reigns ended up saying that there was so many historical pictures and videos taken of them this week, and he couldn't but think that he saw his two championships, but only saw his cousins with only one title each. Reigns ended up saying that's not enough. He ended up saying that he recalls how he told Jay a while ago that they'd elevate him to new levels of greatness, and there's only one way to do that. Reigns then went on to say that it's time to unify the tag team titles. Did I just hear Reigns say it's time to unify the tag team titles? Finally! So Reigns ended up saying that he wants the Usos to go to Monday Night Raw and bring him the Raw tag team titles. Get them for yourselves, because when you do that, you do it for the Bloodline. So Reigns ended up asking if that's a deal. Reigns ended up saying that there you have it. The Bloodline will have all the gold soon. So then out came Shinsuke Nakamura. Of course, Boogs still out. Boogs got injured at WrestleMania. So Nakamura came out. Reigns and the Usos ended up looking annoyed as Nakamura ended up strutting his way to the ring. Reigns ended up saying that Nakamura doesn't have to say anything. He ended up saying that he understands how he feels because he lost his partner. And he ended up saying, you know, the guy, Rick, and then the crowd goes, Boogs. Reigns ended up saying that they lost Jimmy to an injury for a year, so they know how Nakamura feels. Reigns ended up saying that he is a compassionate tribal chief, and now that they have all the gold, the island of relevancy is full of love. Reigns ended up saying that he wants to help Nakamura. So Reigns hugged Nakamura, and he whispered something in Nakamura's ear, and whatever Reigns said to Nakamura confused him. Reigns stepped away. The Usos ended up delivering a double super kick to Nakamura. Nakamura was laid out. So the Usos stood over Nakamura. They were talking trash to him. They then turned to Reigns and ended up telling him that they have his back. So the Usos ended up going on about how they're now headed to Detroit, which Monday Night Raw is going to be in on Monday. So the Bloodline stood tall in the ring. And that was how SmackDown went off the air. So Roman Reigns ended up saying that it's time to unify the tag team titles. So the Usos will be going over to Monday Night Raw, and they will bring the Raw tag team titles. So that means we're unifying the titles. We're only going to get possibly one tag team title belt. So that's good. Next, after that, we only need one belt for the women's division. One. It's time to retire, also get rid of the women's tag team titles. We only need one tag team title belt and one women's title belt. That's what we need. So, but like I said, the Usos are going over to Monday Night Raw. They're going to get the Raw tag team titles. So, yeah, that's a good way. It's time to unify the title belts. But overall, SmackDown, absolutely awful tonight. This was the worst SmackDown of the year, in my opinion. Just a train wreck, this show was. Moving on to AEW Rampage, which I thought was an enjoyable show. We had Bryan Danielson versus Trent Beretta. We had Swerve Strickland versus QT Marshall. We had another match in the Owen Hart Foundation tournament, the qualifying match where it was Red Velvet versus Willow Nightingale. And the main event, we had Wheeler Yuta versus Jon Moxley, which Wheeler Yuta is the ROH Pure Champion, which he won the title last week at the Supercard of Honor show, which was last Friday, which I heard was a very awesome show. It was Tony Khan's first show now that he owns ROH Ring of Honor. And also, what else happened at Supercard of Honor last Friday? Samoa Joe ended up returning. Samoa Joe returned at ROH Supercard of Honor. He has signed with AEW. So Samoa Joe is all elite, which it was very good to hear. Glad that Samoa Joe is now with AEW, and they're going to treat Samoa Joe very good there. I have faith in Tony Khan, letting Samoa Joe go out there and do what he does. So, very good sign by Tony Khan, signing Samoa Joe. Well, Rampage opened up tonight with Bryan Danielson versus Trent Beretta. And this was a good match. Bryan and William Regal are calling themselves the Blackpool Combat Club. And the match started off with Bryan end up landing a kick to Trent Beretta's back. Bryan end up coming off the ropes and runs into a back elbow from Beretta. Bryan end up luring Beretta with some kicks. And William Regal was on commentary for the match. It was great to hear Regal on commentary. And Bryan ended up going for a front headlock. Beretta ended up powering out of that with an overhead suplex to Bryan. Bryan ended up backing Beretta up in the corner, started delivering some chops and kicks. Beretta ended up escaping a suplex from Bryan. He ended up sending Bryan out to the floor. Beretta then ended up going for a dive out to the floor. Bryan ended up meeting Beretta with a kick to his chest, to Beretta's chest. Bryan ended up going for a dive of his own to the outside, but Beretta was waiting with a suplex on the floor, which was awesome. Beretta ended up charging Bryan. Bryan ended up moving it, and Beretta ended up crashing into the ring steps. Beretta was fighting out of a headlock, and Bryan ended up retaking control of the match, starting delivering some strikes to Beretta. Bryan ended up taunting Beretta, and that only just fired Beretta up. And Beretta didn't have, Chucky T or Orange Cassidy out there. Bryan ended up still taking Beretta down with a headlock suplex. So Bryan ended up climbing up to the top rope. Beretta ended up meeting him and climbed up to the top. Beretta ended up bringing Bryan down, delivered a superplex from the top rope. So both Beretta and Bryan were down. So at the end of the match, we had Bryan end up stopping on Trent Beretta's head and locked in a reverse cravat, which William Regal described that as. And Beretta was out, so Bryan ended up winning the match by that. So, but overall, good match from Bryan and Trent Beretta. Very physical match. Really enjoyed it. And then we had Lexi Nair. Lexi Nair was in the locker room with Hook. She was trying to ask Hook some questions. Hook wasn't talking to her, so he was very quiet. Hook ended up getting up to leave, and Danhausen ended up appearing. Danhausen was trying to curse Hook. Danhausen has been trying to curse Hook, many times, but the curse doesn't affect Hook. So Hook ended up walking away. Danhausen ended up having these chips. And pretty much that was basically that. But when is Danhausen going to get in the ring already? Want to see Danhausen have a match already? So is this setting up, Danhausen versus Hook? That's what it's possibly shaping up to be. So then as Rampage came back from the commercial, Scorpio Sky, the TNT champion, Ethan Page and Dan Lambert were in the ring. Scorpio Sky ended up killing the open door challenge because he wants someone to step up and beat him. So we have Sammy Guevara and Tay Conti end up interrupting Scorpio Sky. Sammy Guevara and Tay Conti, I say they are the Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch of AEW. Remember when WWE tried to pair up Becky Lynch and Seth Rollins as a couple, and it came off corny and cringy. And then they had the match with Corbin and Lacey Evans. You possibly all remember that. That's what I see Sammy Guevara and Tay Conti being. They are the Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch of AEW, or what they are doing. So Guevara ended up saying that the TNT Championship means nothing around Scorpio Sky's waist. So Dan Lambert ended up saying that they need to talk more about what they do in the ring and not what they do in the bedroom. So Ethan Page ended up saying that Guevara and Tay Conti are a PR disaster waiting to happen. And Page is right about that. I heard at the tapings, people were booing Sammy Guevara and Tay Conti. So Ethan Page is right about that. This is going to be a disaster waiting to happen. Like I said, it reminds me of when WWE did this with Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch. So Ethan Page ended up praying that his kid doesn't end up like Tay Conti. So Sammy Guevara ended up saying that he doesn't give a shit about Page's kid. He ended up saying that they'll keep coming out every week until he gets his match for the TNT Championship. So that was basically that. But this is going to be a disaster waiting to happen by what Ethan Page had to say with Sammy Guevara and Tay Conti. Like I said already, at the tapings, fans were booing the both of them. We're all booing Guevara and Tay Conti. So it's not going to end well for them. They'll possibly both end up going heel from the fans' response. So then we had Chris Jericho Chris Jericho ended up presenting his Sports Entertainer of the Week award to QT Marshall. And I'm like, really? QT Marshall? So then we had Swerve Strickland versus QT Marshall. QT Marshall was out there with Aaron Solo and Nick Camarado. This was a decent match here. Strickland, he's over with the crowd. The fans love Swerve Strickland. They end up chanting his name, Swerve. So we had Swerve Strickland end up getting an early exchange on QT Marshall with some near falls. QT Marshall ended up trying to send Swerve over the top rope, but Strickland ended up landing on his feet. Strickland was landing a series of forearm strikes to take down QT Marshall. He then ended up hitting a flying European uppercut from the second rope to QT Marshall, which looked good. QT Marshall ended up escaping a half Nelson and land a pop-up forearm to Strickland. Marshall ended up going for the diamond cutter, but Swerve ended up escaping. And that's when Swerve ended up hitting a flatliner and a running back heel kick to the back of QT Marshall's head. And Strickland ended up going for the pin. And there you go. Swerve Strickland ended up winning the match. Post-match, Ricky Starks got on the mic. Ricky Starks was at the commentary table. Ricky Starks ended up saying that he and Strickland have unfinished business. So it was announced that it's going to be Starks and Powerhouse Will Hobbs versus Strickland and Keith Lee this Wednesday on Dynamite. So there you go. There's your match for Dynamite this Wednesday. Tag team match. So then we got a video of Marina Shafir. She ended up saying that she's begging Jade Cargill to solve her. And that was, basically what Marina Shafir had to say. And then we had the Owen Hart Foundation Women's Tournament qualifying match. Red Velvet versus Willow Nightingale. This was an okay match here. Red Velvet ended up escaping Nightingale's control in the match. She ended up kicking Nightingale in the head. Nightingale ended up overpowering on Red Velvet to regain control of the match. She ended up delivering a shoulder tackle, which put Red Velvet down. She ended up going for the cover. Red Velvet kicked out at 2. So Red Velvet ended up backing Nightingale into the corner, started to deliver some strikes. Nightingale ended up cartwheeling out of an Irish whip, which she ended up taking down Red Velvet. She ended up hitting the senton. She went for the cover, and Red Velvet ended up kicking out at 2. Nightingale ended up climbing up to the top rope, and she ended up missing the moonsault, which Red Velvet ended up moving out of the way. Later on, Red Velvet ended up charging into a spine buster by Nightingale. She ended up going for the cover, which Red Velvet ended up kicking out at 2. At the end of the match, Red Velvet ended up escaping a suplex attempt into a backstabber, and she then ended up hitting a corkscrew kick to Nightingale, and she ended up going for the cover. And there you go. Red Velvet ended up winning the match. She ends up moving on in the Owen Hart Foundation Women's Tournament match. Overall, it was an okay match. And then we had Lexi Nair. She was there with Tony Nese. Tony Nese ended up calling himself the hottest free agent signing in AEW history. So Mark Sterling ended up coming over. Mark Sterling ended up offering his card to Tony Nese. So it looks like Mark Sterling wants to offer Tony Nese, something. Mark Sterling will probably manage Tony Nese also. And then we went to Mark Henry. Mark Henry was chatting with Jon Moxley and Wheeler Yuta. Yuta ended up saying that Moxley embarrassed him the first time they wrestled, and he came close to beating him the second time. He wanted to say that he's not scared of Moxley, and he will earn his respect. So Moxley ended up saying that it's not his job to show Yuta respect, and he doesn't care what William Regal thinks of him. And he's going to find out what Yuta is really made of. So that was what both Moxley and Wheeler Yuta had to say to each other. Main event, Wheeler Yuta versus Jon Moxley. Wheeler Yuta, he is the ROH, the Ring of Honor Pure Champion. He won the title at Supercard of Honor last week. He defeated Josh Woods. And the match that he had with Moxley tonight was a awesome match. This was a very good match. Yuta ended up coming out by himself. He did not have the best friends with him. So Yuta came out first, and then Moxley ended up making his way out. As Moxley ended up making his way to the ringside area, Yuta ended up diving on Moxley, and he ended up sending Moxley into the ring steps. And Yuta kept pounding on Moxley on the outside. Moxley ended up managing to escape back to the ringside area. Yuta ended up pressuring him back to the ring. Moxley ended up catching Wheeler Yuta with a German suplex. And so the match ended up starting. The bell rang. Moxley ended up suplexing Yuta, followed up with a running clothesline into the corner. Moxley delivered some chops to Yuta. Yuta ended up finding his way back, started delivering some chops. Moxley ended up putting him down with a boot. And Moxley ended up going for the cover, and Yuta ended up kicking out at 1. So Moxley ended up grounding Wheeler Yuta. Yuta fought back with some chops. Moxley hit a headbutt, and Yuta charged into the corner. Moxley ended up sending him over the top rope to the outside. And Moxley ended up taking Yuta. He ended up driving Yuta into the ring steps, to which Yuta was busted open. Yuta was a bloody mess, and Yuta was getting a little wobbly from all the blood loss that he was having. So Yuta was fighting to the ropes while he was in a Boston Crab from Moxley. Moxley ended up tumbling to the outside, and Yuta ended up diving from the top rope, and he ended up driving Moxley through the timekeeper's table. So Yuta ended up catching Moxley in a backslide, and Moxley ended up kicking out at 2, and he followed up with a German suplex. So Yuta ended up hitting a second German, but he couldn't get a third German suplex because Moxley ended up escaping. So Yuta ended up grabbing Moxley's wrist, started stomping his head, just like in the vein of Bryan Danielson. Yuta ended up landing a splash from the top rope, and he followed up with a crossface on Moxley in the middle of the ring. Moxley reversed that into a pin attempt, to which Yuta kicked out at 2. Moxley ended up hitting a lariat to Yuta, and Yuta ended up kicking out at 2, so both Moxley and Yuta were down. Moxley ended up getting up to his feet. He ended up punching Yuta, and Yuta ended up fighting back. He wasn't having none of it. Moxley ended up going after Yuta's face, and he ended up backing Yuta into the corner. Yuta pushed off Moxley and dived right into the paradigm shift by Moxley. And Moxley ended up going for the cover. Yuta ended up kicking out at 2, which Moxley couldn't believe that. I'm like, nobody has kicked out of the paradigm shift. So Moxley ended up locking the bulldog on Yuta. Yuta wouldn't tap out. Moxley was going for some knee strikes to Yuta's head. Moxley ended up going for a running boot, to which Yuta ended up reversing that into his own bulldog. Moxley was able to power out of it, but Yuta locked in a sleeper hold on Moxley. Moxley escaped that and started pounding Yuta with some elbows. Moxley ended up hitting a running knee strike and a paradigm shift, another paradigm shift to Yuta. And he went for the cover. Yuta once again kicked out, and the crowd was just going crazy for that. Moxley locked on a rear naked choke on Yuta, and Yuta ended up passing out. So Moxley ended up winning the match. Post-match, William Regal and Bryan end up coming down to the ring. Yuta was on his knees as Bryan, Moxley, and William Regal end up surrounding him. Yuta was arguing to them to bring it on, to just punch the hell out of him, beat him down. And they all did nothing to Yuta. Yuta stood on his feet. Regal ended up extending his hand out to Yuta. Yuta ended up shaking William Regal's hand. It was respect. So that was pretty much how Rampage went off the air. But it wasn't made clear that Yuta is now part of the Blackpool Combat Club with Regal and Bryan. It's not made clear now. But I kind of have a sense that Yuta is going to be the next member in the Blackpool Combat Club. But overall, this was a very good match, very entertaining match between Moxley and Wheeler Yuta. Wheeler Yuta, after this match, has my respect. The guy gave it all he got in this match. He was even a bloody mess. So overall, Rampage was a good show tonight. And Rampage next week is going to start at 7 o'clock. So we're going to have Rampage and then Smackdown after that. To which Rampage will probably be the better show. But good, we don't have to stay up until 11 o'clock next Friday. But overall, that's it for my review of Smackdown and AEW Rampage. Thank you all for watching. Hope you all enjoyed this review. Definitely give the video a thumbs up, comment, subscribe. Be sure to check out my previous video if you guys haven't seen it, my review of Sonic the Hedgehog 2. So check out that. And until next video, I'll see you all later.